I'd love to know, getting back to Saturday Night Live itself, Hugh, what was the behind the scenes process like for a writer ideating a sketch and actually getting it on the air?
It's a very challenging, stressful process that starts over every single week that
Hmm.
you have a new episode. And it really starts Monday when the guest host comes and meets with the writing staff on Monday night and they exchange some ideas. Then between Tuesday and Wednesday, the writers submit all their sketches for the week, which is averages around 40 sketches. Now keep
Wow.
in mind, the only number of sketches that airs in a given episode might be 10 to 12, if that. So most people's sketches are not getting picked. And it's really competitive. And on Wednesday night, they pick the sketches for the weekend. And then Thursday and Friday, they rehearse those sketches that are going to be on. And then Saturday early evening, there's a dress rehearsal, which is done just like an actual live show. But what happens is they do more sketches than they need at the dress rehearsal and end up cutting about 15 minutes worth of material. So
Wow.
even until a few minutes before Saturday night, the live show, you don't necessarily know if your sketch has made it or not.
Can you recall a sketch that you really enjoyed writing that you thought would hit that didn't make it to air?
Oh, there were many for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, any writer who's there as long as I have would say the same. But well, one sketch that I had hoped to make it the air, but realized it wasn't going to was the infamous 9/11 show. It was the first Saturday Night Live after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I was a writer there, and I wrote a sketch for Will Ferrell where he played Cat Stevens, the singer,
Ah,
aka Yusuf Islam. And the joke, Josh, was that I took Cat Stevens' greatest hits and changed all the lyrics to be about terrorism. And Will was dressed as a Muslim sheik, like Cat Stevens appears now, long beard and a turban, and he's singing these songs related to 9/11, which of course is granted very dark, but
right.
that's a humor. And Will did a hilarious impression. He sounded just like Cat Stevens. And the sketch was good enough to get picked. Like I described, it got picked at the table read. But by Saturday, I was hearing grumblings that NBC was not happy with the sketch. They thought that it was defaming Cat Stevens' reputation, and it ended up getting cut. So that was a bummer.
Yeah. I'm curious see how I phrase this. I'm curious what the emotional experience of having a sketch get cut is. Is it like, the sketch is cut and then you think, "Oh shoot, now my head is just a little bit more on that potential chopping block?" Because I imagine it's a bit of a churn and burn with an environment as competitive as that.
It's depressing when your sketch is cut. It really is. I don't know if it's more depressing to have your sketch cut at dress rehearsal or to come out of the table read on Wednesday having nothing in the show.
Mm,
That's really demoralizing when you have nothing for the week that you've written on the air.
yeah.
But I would maybe compare having your sketch cut at dress rehearsal to an athlete who's in the playoffs, right? Trying to make it to the World Series and their team loses, so they don't advance to the final round. Maybe that's a good comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. I would love to know, what was your relationship with the late great Norm Macdonald like? One of my favorite comedians ever.
Oh, that's cool. We had a good
Yeah.
relationship. We weren't friends who socialized. We were friendly and made each other laugh and had a really good trust and respect for each other. So Norm knew me as a comedian. I knew him as a comic. We ended up both at Saturday Night Live. And I think where I really won Norm over was when I convinced him that he could do the best Larry King impression of all time. And I went out and wrote Larry King's News and Views, which we did 3 or 4 times, and I think to this day is the best Larry King impression ever. And it had a really original angle to making fun of Larry King, and Norm loved doing it. He loved it. And the story I heard recently, Josh, is that Johnny Carson told Norm that he loved the Larry King bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Johnny had seen it and thought it was hilarious.
That's incredible. Well, it's funny you mentioned that you have a sense of dark humor. By odd coincidence, I kind of do as well. And one of my favorite lines from Norm Macdonald is, as we know, he sadly passed of cancer. And he said, "Well, I didn't really lose a battle with cancer because when I die, the cancer dies too. That's kind of a draw."
That's right, making fun of the word battle.
Yeah.
I also worked with Norm on one of his really famous bit, the ESPY Awards for ESPN, which he hosted and I produced and was head writer. And that was a famous ESPYs because of what we did on the air. The ESPYs changed their whole approach to comedy because they thought that it was way too mean and controversial. But it went over huge to the audience. And Will Ferrell came on as the late Harry Carey, the Chicago Cubs announcer, and did a bit with Norm where he just made fun of all the famous athletes in the house. I mean, everybody was there. I'm saying Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan. I mean, it was huge. But Norm was brilliant. And the jokes that we did for him in the ESPY Awards were unforgettable.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the clip that you're referring to. He's pure unfiltered Norm Macdonald in that.
Yes. And again, it was all scripted, that's all on teleprompter. But Norm was a master stand-up and could deliver the material seamlessly and with confidence, and he didn't care.
Yeah, for my money, delivery and timing, it's got to be Rodney and Norm. I think are probably the two best I've ever seen. Actually, oftentimes, in my opinion, you can see Norm even sort of channeling Rodney. He says, and then I say, and then he says.
Right.
In any event, excuse me. I'd love to know then, Hugh, what was it like working with Chris Farley and writing that El Nino sketch?
I loved working with Chris. I only worked with him at Saturday Night Live that time when he came back to host, right? Because he had left the show. But I was friendly with Chris through David Spade. They were great buddies. And I did a couple projects with Chris and David to promote their movie Black Sheep. When Farley would come to Los Angeles, I'd hang out with him. And I'd see him in New York sometimes. And we got along great. He liked when I made fun of Spade. That was his favorite thing, because he and Spade had that type of friendship where they totally busted on each other. And as a friend of Spade's, I'd bust on him, and Farley loved when I would make fun of Spade. So it was a huge loss for those of us who knew Chris and worked with him. Was it a loss that was shocking? Sadly, I can't say that, but still so young. I think he was 33.
Yeah.
And he had so much left as a great actor, performer to give.